In today's episode, we're going to be discussing two stories. One that was very recently came out concerning Ellen DeGeneres, and the second one was a longer story concerning the NBA and China among the Hong Kong protests. And we're going to talk about all of that today. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you're listening to The Giraldo Show. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you're listening to The Giraldo Show. I hope everyone's having a fantastic Wednesday, and we're going to get right into today's stories. So the first story of the day is going to talk about Ellen DeGeneres. Now, for those who don't know, Ellen DeGeneres is a talk show host for her own show, Ellen, and she is a gay woman. She is a lesbian, but she is a very, very famous talk show host. I've watched her show a couple of times, and I have enjoyed it. She is pretty funny. And there was a very recent story that came out during the Cowboys-Packers game that happened last week, and it concerned her sitting next to George W. Bush, a former conservative Republican president who apparently used to call for a constitutional ban on gay marriage. So there was a lot of stories that came out talking about why Ellen DeGeneres would sit next to George W. Bush, because they're so different in opinion, and Twitter came out with guns a-blazing, trying to promote this separation, saying, how could you, Ellen, sit next to a conservative president when you guys are so different in beliefs? You should be fighting against him. You should not be sitting next to him. So Ellen DeGeneres pretty much came out. She posted a video, or on her show recently, she posted saying that it's a bit unreasonable what she was trying to say. So this is what she said. This is the transcript of what her conversation was with the Ellen Show. So this weekend I went to Dallas for the Cowboys game, and it may not seem like a big deal for a celebrity to attend a football game, but I never leave my house, so it's a big deal. So there were 100,000 people in the stadium. Portia and I were invited by Charlotte Jones. She's the daughter of Jerry Jones, who owns the Dallas Cowboys. So I gotta say, when we were invited, I was aware that I was going to be surrounded by people with different views and beliefs. But during the game, they showed a shot of George and me laughing together. That's George W. Bush, the former president. So people were upset. They thought, why is a gay Hollywood liberal sitting next to a conservative Republican president? A lot of people were mad, and they did what most people do when they're mad. They tweet. And that's what I said before. There was a lot of backlash on Twitter concerning this event. So again, you notice that there's a lot of separation from both parties, mostly from the liberal side, where they can't really accept that Ellen is sitting next to George W. Bush. You didn't really see a lot of conservatives doing that because the conservative party really believes in uniting Americans by that core belief that we are all Americans. Despite the nasty tweets directed her way, Ellen shared a particular tweet that she loved. Ellen and George Bush together makes me have faith in America again, and that's very important. It's so crucial to understand that we have people that don't actually mind when some people from two different viewpoints come together and laugh and are friends. Ellen continues, "Here's the thing. I'm friends with George Bush. In fact, I'm friends with a lot of people who don't share the same beliefs that I have," Ellen said. "We're all different, and I think we've forgotten that that's okay, that we're all different. For instance, I wish people wouldn't wear fur. I don't like it, but I'm friends with people who wear fur. But just because I don't agree with someone on everything doesn't mean that I'm not going to be friends with them. When I say be kind to one another, I don't mean only the people that think the same way that you do. I mean be kind to everyone." And that's a very important message that Ellen is spreading out to her audience and to anyone who's really watching the Ellen Show. It's really important to be kind to every person that you encounter. If you're just mean to them because they have a different political viewpoint, that's not going to accomplish anything. You're doing exactly the opposite of what should be happening. We should be getting people together. We should be uniting people instead of trying to separate by gender, and sex, race, political beliefs, etc. So this story from Ellen is very big because she's saying, look, I might not have the same viewpoints as this person or that person, but it doesn't mean that I can't be friends with that person. And that's very important because I feel like in today's political spectrum, you got a lot of people, especially on the liberal side of the party, that don't want to be friends with Republicans or conservatives just because they believe in different things. For instance, there were two videos that PragerU came out, and I recommend you go watch them. The first one is Would You Be Friends with a Republican? And then the second one, I think, is titled Would You Be Friends with a Democrat? It might be a little bit different, but I'm sure if you look up those titles, you're going to get those videos. So in those videos, in the Democrat video, Will Witt, who is a reporter for PragerU, he was at New York City, and he asked liberals or Democrats if they would be friends with the Republican. And every single one of them answered no, because they were too radical, or they just didn't agree with them, or because New York is very diverse and they think that the Conservative Party is very bigoted and racist and sexist and etc. All the typical stuff that the mainstream media will have you believe that conservatives are. On the flip side, Will Witt went to Brigham Young University, I believe, in Utah, and he talked to a lot of Republicans or conservatives, and all of them said yes, they would be friends with the Democrat because they want to try to unite people together. It doesn't matter how different viewpoints meet. It just matters that we all unite and we're all nice to each other, because that's kind of what America's about. America is what I guess you could call it's a civic nationalism, where you're together, you're in this nation because of citizenship and because of shared values. It's not because of a shared race, a shared gender. So that's very important to understand, that we are all in this country and we are all Americans. So we should be able to unite based on really core American values, being patriotic, having the right to liberty, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. All of those things that were laid down in the Constitution and in the Bill of Rights are very important for Americans to understand that we need to have. But I think it's very interesting that now, especially I think due to a lot of mainstream media, that we have a lot of separation between the political parties. You have people on the conservative side who are trying to reunite the parties together, not necessarily in political beliefs, but try to get them to understand each other and be tolerant of one another. And you got people on the liberal and democratic side doing that as well. But you see a lot more leftists trying to separate based on political party, based on race actually, which is ironically the opposite of the message that they're trying to send. They're trying to send a message of, we're not trying to avoid being racist against the racist conservatives, even though they specifically separate people based on their race by victimizing people based on race, sex, political beliefs, etc. So this message from Ellen, again, a Hollywood liberal, is extremely important because it's going to show her audience, that I'm going to assume are mostly people who are on that Democratic side of the party. It's going to show those people that it's very important to be kind to everyone, as she says at the end of the episode. Not just kind to people who are similar to you in your beliefs, but to be kind to everyone who you encounter, because you never know when that person can be very important to you in your future life. For instance, I recently uploaded an episode about my experience at Turning Point USA in Philadelphia, and I tried to be nice to every single person, and those people that I were nice to, they were nice back to me, and we became friends, and we had good conversations about everything, politics, sports, etc. You understand the picture, but it's very important for us to be nice to each other and to make sure that we're not just separating each other solely based on political beliefs, on race, on sex, etc. It kind of goes the opposite of what Martin Luther King Jr. wanted for our future generations. He said he doesn't want people to be judged by their race, wants people to be judged by their character. And I think that's the only thing that we should be able to separate each other. If someone else has a character that's not to your liking, if someone is mean and vicious to you, you should not be expected to be nice or vicious back. I mean, you can be, and that's expected of you, I guess. If you're nice to someone who's vicious at you, they're going to seem like the villain, and that's important to understand. But you don't have to be friends with someone who's mean to you because you don't like their character and because they're being mean to you. So that's very important for us to understand, because we see a lot that people are being separated by political beliefs, and we kind of need to get back to a point where we are just friends with each other because we want to be friends with each other, not because we share the same beliefs. Okay, next story of the day is an ongoing story. It's had roots back a couple of months back. It has to do with Hong Kong and China. For those who don't know, Hong Kong is currently fighting for their democracy rights, or fighting against China. So the Hong Kong story, I guess I'll summarize it a bit. So back in the 90s, China called the UK, and Hong Kong was a British colony, I guess you could say, called the UK saying, we're going to take over Hong Kong if you don't deliberately give it to us. So Margaret Thatcher, who was the prime minister at the time, went to China, gave them a deal saying, okay, we'll give you China, but make sure that they have the same freedoms that we do, and that we've been giving them, So the people of Hong Kong have been expecting these freedoms for the longest time. They've had a really successful growth in economics. They've had their income grow. They've been doing much better than mainland China. But now you're starting to see China really cutting down on those freedoms, especially because of a bill that recently was attempted to be passed where criminals in Hong Kong can be tried in China, where there is a 99.9% criminal conviction rate and I think it's like 5 or 10 minutes, or maybe even 20 minutes for someone to get convicted for the death penalty in China. So Hong Kong is fighting for democracy. I support Hong Kong in their fight. They need to fight for their freedom, and it's very important. But now we get to the NBA, and I personally am a big fan of the NBA. I like NBA basketball. I think it's very important to me because I just like watching sports. I am personally a fan of the Philadelphia 76ers, have been since 2015 when the team went a miraculous 10-72. But anyway, we'll get into that maybe in a later episode. But pretty much what's been happening, the GM of the Houston Rockets, Daryl Morey, he had a tweet supporting the Hong Kong protests against China's new extradition bill. He had to delete his tweet, and the NBA came out with a statement saying that we're really sorry we offended our Chinese fans, and we're not going to really tolerate what Morey said. Here's the problem. That came out with a lot of controversy, Adam Silver in particular, because a lot of U.S. politicians and a lot of NBA fans, myself included, really thought that this was kind of a cop-out to try to not get Chinese businesses to stop dealing with the NBA. And we've already seen that with some Chinese businesses cutting ties with the Houston Rockets just because of that one tweet that has been deleted. So very recently, Adam Silver came out with a statement saying that they support free speech. But again, it seems a bit like a cop-out to the previous statement where Adam Silver was pretty much giving himself up to the Chinese, saying, look, we are going to support the Chinese. We're sorry we offended you. We're not going to do that again. So a lot of NBA fans that are into politics and are into the news that know about this entire Hong Kong situation really weren't very happy about that deal. So it's been a lot of controversy between the NBA and between China. And one person in particular, Steve Kerr, who is the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, who is very politically loud. He doesn't really give up an opportunity to make fun of President Trump or to criticize Trump, but especially when it came to this situation of the Hong Kong and the NBA, he responded, it's a really bizarre international story, and a lot of us don't know what to make of it. So it's something I'm reading about just like everybody is, but I'm not going to comment further than that. Which is weird. He's really never been silent. He's always taken the opportunity to talk and criticize Donald Trump, especially one example when the Trump uninvited the Philadelphia Eagles to the White House after they won the Super Bowl, mostly because a lot of the Philadelphia Eagles did not want to go to the White House to be with the president. So Steve Kerr stated, what you're seeing is the athletes are showing patriotism through their community service. The president is turning all of this stuff into a political game and a ratings game, and it's a blatant display of nationalism. Patriotism is helping your fellow citizen, whether it's what Katie's doing or what we did when we visited Washington, what the Lynx are doing today. This is what patriotism is about. I'm blown away by the irony of the Eagles being disinvited. When you read about their good deeds in their communities, Malcolm Jenkins is addressing lawmakers, trying to get to the root of the issues we have. Instead, we have these military sing-alongs at the White House to show how patriotic we are, even though we don't know the words. It's just incredible. Well, to me, what's incredible is when that's only one part of the story. Trump did disinvite the Philadelphia Eagles in the White House, but that was only after the Philadelphia Eagles all pretty much said, we're not going to the White House because we don't like the president. So again, it's part of that media bias where you're only listening to one side of the story, but not getting the other side. So it's very important for someone to get both sides of the stories. And we've seen Steve Kerr really complaining about what Trump has been doing a lot with tweets. But it's really weird that he's just staying silent, especially in a case for freedom of speech. Because the Adam Silver comment that came out, it was talking all about freedom of speech, saying we support Maury's freedom of speech just like anyone else in our community, but we understand that there are going to be consequences for that freedom of speech. That should have really been the first comment that came out saying, look, we support Maury's freedom of speech. We understand that there might be some backlash due to that freedom of speech, but it's part of our nation. And either way, I think China would have start cutting ties with the Houston Rockets and with the NBA, but I think it would have been a lot less controversial if we would have gotten someone like Adam Silver coming out saying we support freedom of speech, not necessarily coming out in support of Hong Kong, because I think that's another ordeal that he needs to deal with, but at least coming out saying, look, we support Maury's freedom of speech, even though we understand it might have some backlash and some consequences. So that's very important to understand, because you got a lot of people from the NBA, a lot of patriots that watch the NBA who are in support of Hong Kong. And when they heard that comment, that original comment from Adam Silver, you got a lot of backlash on it. And Adam Silver saw that backlash and realized, I don't want people to boycott the NBA. So I'm going to come out with a statement pretty much saying, I support freedom of speech. I understand it might be hateful. So it could seem like a little bit of a cop-out for people who are just who are avid listeners or watchers of the NBA, but the comment was needed, even because Adam Silver made a big mistake with the original comment. I do agree with a lot of people saying he kind of pretty much gave himself up to the Chinese businesses that support the NBA, more for monetary value instead of standing up for values of America. So I think that's a very important story to cover, and that's really going to be it for today's episode. Make sure you give the episode a like and a follow on whatever platform you listen to, and I'll see you here tomorrow at the same time. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you're listening to The Giraldo Show.